These were adjacent headlines in the Washington Post last week. Biden administration cancels $1.2 billion in student loans with new repayment plan. Right next to Trump and allies planning militarized mass deportations, detention camps. Right? That's the choice, right? Right? Relief from high student loans or using the military to lock up millions of people in huge new camps. Adjacent headlines in the Washington Post on the same day. Both parties at the same point in general election campaigning, thinking about what they want to be doing to present to the American people about what their idea is of governing. And I don't know which of those two sides the American people is more in the mood for, but it seems pretty clear, to me at least, that the best contrast for the Democrats to draw for voters this year is maybe just the simplest one, right? Normal, popular, practical accomplishments from President Biden and the Democrats versus burn it all down radicalism being screamed at the top of their lungs by Republicans under Donald Trump. And you can't even understand what they're talking about half the time because they speak in their own code. Barbara McQuade, who you know and love from her time here as a legal analyst and explainer on MSNBC, she has a new book that comes out tomorrow. It's called Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. And in her new book, among other things, Barb explains what she sees as the connection between disinformation, which is the fundamental basis for the book, and authoritarianism. Why you need to disconnect people from facts about the world, from the knowable truth and all its complexity, in order to get people to endorse extremism, to endorse extreme, new, radical changes, to reimagine their lives and to reimagine their country in a way they've never thought of it before. Barb, in her book, talks about the need to hit people emotionally rather than logically. She talks about the sort of the utility of the would-be authoritarian leader or the authoritarian movement, focusing rhetorically on declinism, convincing people that the country is falling apart. The country used to be great, but it's no longer great. It's falling apart. It's a disaster. If you can convince people of that, they will have an emotional reaction about being afraid at the state of the country now. They'll have an emotional reaction about wanting to rescue the country. If they can be convinced that things are so far gone, they will then feel the need for extreme measures, for a strong man to come in. And, you know, maybe you got to wreck the place. Maybe you got to break the rules, but it's a kind of rescue mission for a country that is otherwise lost. And what that means in practical terms, in terms of actually running a political campaign that in a matter of months will supposedly pick a new president, what that means is every day making sure that your message undermines the idea of democracy and the idea of the rule of law. So, I mean, this isn't theory. This isn't academic. This is our lives now. Trump advisor Steve Bannon, who you just saw there yelling about vermin and trash at CPAC, he spent last week telling his podcast listeners that the Tom Suozzi election in Long Island was stolen. What? Yes. In Steve Bannon world, this was the story of last week. This is the special election to replace George Santos. There's no suggestion there was anything wrong with the count or anything wrong with the conduct of that election at all. But it doesn't matter. A Democrat won. And so therefore, Steve Bannon tells his acolytes and his followers that that election must have been stolen because a Democrat won and they should not respect the results of it. Even when it doesn't matter, when it's one special election for one congressional seat and there's no real controversy about it, still, you have to say elections don't count. Elections aren't real. Now, on top of that, we've got the Republican National Committee losing its chair, Ronna Romney McDaniel. She's being replaced summarily by a North Carolina Republican who is reportedly considered by Trump to be more solid, specifically on the issue of throwing out election results. Ms. McDaniel was no slouch on this issue herself, but apparently Trump wants somebody even stronger specifically on that point. He's a stop the steal guy. And so now he will be now running the RNC if Trump gets his way. And, you know, the politics of running against democracy, the politics of getting Americans to distrust elections and ultimately not want them anymore, that is inextricably intertwined with getting Americans to distrust the legal system, to not trust the courts and not trust the justice system anymore, to not take it seriously, to not obey its dictates, to not respect any of its rules. And Barb's book, more than anything, helped me see the connection of the connection between those 2 points, between getting rid of elections and getting rid of the rule of law. You have to get rid of the rule of law, right? You have to undermine and problematize it so that you can get away with what you are trying to do to elections. Right? And this is all over the news right now. Just on Friday, the Wisconsin Ethics Commission referred a Trump PAC and multiple Republican officials for felony prosecution for their role in a Wisconsin scheme to punish a Republican leader in the Wisconsin state legislature who Trump thought didn't fight hard enough to throw out the election results in that state. We want you to throw out those election results. You don't do a good enough job. We're now going to, allegedly, commit crimes in order to turf you out of your position. Recommended for prosecution as of Friday. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to throw out the sanctions, the professional sanctions against Trump lawyers Sidney Powell and Lin Wood for their efforts to overthrow the election results. Mike Lindell, Mike Pillow, last week he was ordered by a judge to pay up in a contest he held where he promised $5 million cash to anybody who could disprove his claims that a foreign government helped steal the election for Biden. Somebody did disprove those claims, and now a court says Mr. Pillow has to pay. He, of course, does not want to pay, but a court says he must. In Georgia, the right-wing group True the Vote that apparently ginned up all the false claims about supposed problems in the Georgia elections in 2020. They made hay with those claims for not just weeks around the election, but months and ultimately years. But when it got put through the legal system, they had to admit to a judge that no, they don't actually have any evidence to back up their claims that there was fraud in Georgia. Trump and multiple Georgia co-defendants are now going to go on trial for trying to overthrow the election result in Georgia, which they did by citing this fake evidence from this group, True the Vote. What will happen in that case? Will that case come to trial? Trump and his co-defendants' best hope is not their defense, but their unrelated personal counteroffensive to try to discredit and disqualify the prosecutor to get her thrown off the case. The rule of law is protecting democracy. We've got to get rid of the rule of law. Hypocrisy is like a cold, windy day in the winter. You don't love it, but it's not like you don't expect it. But what Barb McQuade is writing about in her new book, and what we are seeing from the campaign this year, is something that is not inevitable, but something planned, something systematic, and something very, very, very radical. The Democrats are campaigning against it by saying, we're doing normal politics, delivering normal practical results for real-world problems. The Republicans are promising to burn it all down. They have to undermine the idea of democracy and the rule of law in order to get to their end game.